with Bishop Dale C. Bronner.
I know that you love God with your heart. You know, God's so good to us. He is. Anybody who's ever questioning whether or not God is good, you ought to let your mind run back over some of the stuff that you've done, that He had to forgive you all, wash you and cleanse you. You will really begin to celebrate God in such an incredible way just because you know God has been good to you. You better thank Him that He didn't give you what you deserved. The Lord is good. The Lord is good, and His mercy endures forever. And we love Him and bless Him and thank Him so much for being such an awesome, awesome God. You'll never advance to a place in life where you don't need God. God never designed it for us to grow up and become independent of Him. He's not the same as an earthly daddy or an earthly mama. You know, when you have children and your great joy is to let your children grow up and get out of your house and be out on their own and don't call you for money particularly. But God is the type of God where He will never call you to do something that He expects you to do without His help. It is God's way of saying, I'm going to write a huge stage play, and I'm going to star you in it, but I'm going to write myself in the script, and I'm going to be the power behind you that gives you a story even worth telling. It is because of God that you have a story worth telling. Because if there is no deliverance or healing or breakthrough in your story is depressing. It's when God takes somebody who was homeless, and as an act of His own grace, sovereignly, God opened doors and lets you meet somebody that gives you a chance, and you know it was God. Where somebody takes a risk with you because you didn't have the qualifications to get the job to begin with, but somebody took a chance on you. It is the element of God that makes your story even worth telling. And for some of you that have not gotten to the glory part of your story yet, don't close the book when God was just turning the page to another chapter. He's not finished. I'll remind you over and over again that all is well in the end, and if all is not well, is not the end. And God said, I will do a new thing, and He's committed to that. The awesomeness of our wonderful, wonderful God. Well, if you will, turn in your Bibles as we are dealing with a series here using Proverbs chapter 6 as a foundation here on changing your trajectory. Changing your trajectory. Proverbs chapter 6 and verse 6. You do realize that Proverbs is our book of wisdom. It is our book of wisdom written by a very wise man, and we glean from that wisdom today. Proverbs chapter 6 and verse 6. Go to the ant, you sluggard, consider her ways and be wise, which having no captain, overseer, or ruler provides her supplies in the summer and gathers her food in the harvest. How long will you slumber, O sluggard? When will you rise from your sleep? A little slumber, a little folding of the hands to sleep? So shall your poverty come on you like a prowler, and your need like an armed man. He was saying to you that the seasons of your life are going to change. Do not think that the season that you're in is going to last forever, because it won't. And so God was saying, I want you to prepare while you're in this season for the next season that you're going into. That's wisdom. That's where wisdom comes into the picture. I want you to just be able to glean these things, just these few little lessons here, just from these verses here. Number one, don't be afraid to learn from others. Don't be afraid to learn from others. Some people act like they take pride in discovering everything themselves. Don't be afraid to learn from others. That's what mentoring is all about. It's the wisdom without the wounds. I mean, if you see somebody else who's all bruised up, find out how they got bruised up, and don't you go that way. You know, you really honestly don't have to find out everything yourself. You really don't. So don't be afraid to learn from others. Don't be afraid to consult others. If you're trying to build a business, go to somebody who's got a successful business that is similar to what you want to build and consult with them. Find out what were some of their greatest challenges, some of the greatest hurdles that they had to try to overcome. Find out certain things that you can do to sort of put you ahead of the game. And just consult with others. Go to the ant and consult. He was telling them, here the second thing, observe them. Consider their ways. Learn from them. Observe, consider, learn from them. Be wise. When we say be wise, you know what that means? Put it into action. Wisdom is applied knowledge. Wisdom is applied knowledge. There are a lot of educated folks that never apply it. I know some people that are more educated, they got more degrees than a thermometer and don't know how to pour water out of a boot. They don't have sense enough to come in out of the rain. I mean, they've got knowledge, but it is not applied knowledge. That's really wisdom. Wisdom knows what to do, when to do, how to do it, and then gets up and does it. That's wisdom. That's wisdom. That's wisdom. What good is it to know to do the right things and then you don't do it? To know to take care of your health and then you keep eating like you're crazy until you have a breakdown and then the doctor has to give you some bad news. You know, no. Wisdom sees this thing afar off and prepares for it. You have to start working in your current season for the season that you're going in. That's a principal lesson that we learn from the ant. You take from the times of abundance and you save for times of scarcity. You take from times of abundance and save for times of scarcity. And where most people make the mistake is that when the good times are rolling, they invite all of their friends over and they say, hey, listen, drinks on me. And then they end up spending all of their money in riotous living when God gave them surplus during a time of plenty for the time for them to be able to save something, put something back for times of scarcity. That's what the ant does. That's why he says, go thou sluggard. You know what a sluggard is? Is a lazy person sitting at home surfing the net, saying that they're looking for a job. And may I just tell you the truth about the matter, that you don't get the best jobs by surfing the net. You really don't. They come through meeting people. 80% of the best paying jobs come by reference of somebody that you meet. A two-legged human being that you meet and they like you and you like them and then they put in a recommendation for you. The only reason that people with big money don't give it to you is because they don't know you. If they knew you and what your potential and creativity is, maybe they would invest in you. But I find that folks invest in people that they know. And so you have to get out. The internet is artificial intelligence. The key word operative here is artificial. That is artificial reality. Virtual reality is not real. And you have to really get that through your medulla oblongata. No, I'm really serious. Virtual reality is not real. It is not real. It is not real. If you think that you've got 1,200 friends for real, ask them all to send you $10. I mean, if you got a real friend, I mean, wouldn't a friend let you hold $20? Now, I'm going to tell you what happened in one of my previous churches. We had a guy that got in financial straits, and he approached 1,000 people in the church, asked them for $10, and guess what? He got it. These were people that he had a relationship with in the church. Got 10 of my dollars. Did I ever get it back? No. But it wasn't enough for me to lose sleep over. You understand what I mean? If you really have, what I'm talking about, if you really have 1,200 friends on Facebook, if there was a really your friend, tell them to let you hold $20. You will see how real these virtual friends are. You'll see how real the virtual friends are. So you have to get out, you have to meet people in the real world, because we don't live in cyberspace. You don't eat in cyberspace. You got to do that in the real world. Don't send me a cyber piece of chicken. No. I want the real thing. Cyber fruit doesn't do it for you. You know, you got to have the real thing. So as we're looking here, notice he says, oh, a little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands. Here's a message here. Wake up and be aware. Wake up and be aware. When I read the Bible, I'm not reading the Bible as a dead history book. I'm asking the question, Lord, what are you saying to me through this word? What are you saying to me? So remember, here are just some lessons that we're getting from this. Don't be afraid to learn from others. Don't be afraid to consult others. Observe, learn, be wise, and put it into action. Take from the abundant times and use it for times of scarcity. Wake up and be aware. Here's another lesson that we learn here. Take initiative. Take initiative. Don't wait until somebody else comes and takes you by the hand and tells you to do it. Take initiative. You find leaders don't wait to be told what to do. They see something that needs to be done and they take initiative. Don't wait until you get a title before you take initiative. If you're on a job and you see something that needs to be done, take initiative and get the job done. And if you really want to let people know about it, write it all up in a report and send it to management and let them know what you took the initiative to do without anybody asking you to do it. But these are some things that you saw where there was a need, you were able to meet the need, and you met the need without anybody having to tell you to do it. You know, when my dad was considering hiring people, he had some litter that he had out on the lawn, and he could look out of his window and watch as they came in for their interview. You know the lady who got the job? She was a lady that stopped and picked up the litter and acted like she worked there before she ever worked there. She was a lady that took responsibility. She had the initiative. The other little people came in all looking all cute and everything in their heel, like they looked at it and they kept right on walking. And the one that got my daddy's attention and the one that he gave the job to was the lady that picked up the trash off of the lawn as she was coming into the building. He knew that that was an exceptional person. And true enough, it turned out to be an exceptional person. So you'll learn big things sometimes by the little things that people are willing to do or not do. I never will forget a friend of mine, we've grown to be friends now, but he asked me to come to his church, and he knew that his church was nothing near the size of ours, because he heard me on TBN make the statement that if a person is too big to preach in a small place, then they're too small to preach in a big place. And so he said to me, he called me after that, sent me an email or something, said, I'm in a small place. I want to see if you'll come. He wanted to call me on the carpet about it. I surprised him. I went. Because if you're too big to speak in a small place, you're too small to speak in a big place. And they're the little things that God will use in order to qualify our lives. So you have to prepare yourself in the current season for the next season. When you reap a harvest in this season, you have to prepare for the next season into which you're going. Let me just say this to you. If you are expecting growth in your future, hear me very carefully. If you are expecting growth in your future, realize that all growth must be financed. Growth is costly. It costs you to grow a business. I meant to move into a bigger place is going to cost you more money. When your family grows, it costs you money. If you got to move into a bigger house, a bigger building, and you got to have more equipment, it will cost you money. You must finance growth. So you have to start preparing while you're in this season, because growth costs. It must be financed. And what happens is that as the seasons change, remember that you deal with transition and change. And remember, I told you transition is the emotional, relational, financial, and psychological processing of change. It's the transition that gets people, not the change, because you've got to plan for the transition. How is this going to affect me emotionally, relationally, financially, psychologically? That's what transition is. It is the emotional, relational, financial, and psychological processing of change. Change change in and of itself is external. Transition is internal, but change is external. And so we have to prepare ourselves for the change that's happening in our life. And here's what I want you to be able to see. That remember this, we're not just dealing with a changing landscape, we are dealing with navigating a changing seascape. We're on a seascape because the whole foundations on which we are is changing. How certain whole industries are changing. It's one thing to look from the hotel room and look out and watch the waves come up, to the shore, and the shoreline essentially doesn't change. But when you get out on the water, with the ebb and flow of the water, you're dealing with constant change, an ebb and flow. You're dealing with constant change. We are on a seascape. If you're in a boat, on a raft, on a float, out in the water, even if you do nothing, the currents will carry you somewhere that you really don't want to go. So when you do nothing, you actually get carried away. So you have to be very intentional about what's happening in your life. Remember that you drift and you're carried somewhere. So whenever you're on a seascape, just remember that the environment is always changing. The environment is always changing. Remember, too, that the change is happening faster than you realize. The change is happening faster than you realize. And you're going to new places. You are going to new places. And you better be thinking about those new places so that you can make course corrections that are needed in order to reach your destination. You have to be willing to make the course corrections to make your destination. Now I want you to notice something in Proverbs chapter 14 and verse 15 and 16 in the New Living Translation of Scripture. It says it this way: only the simpletons believe everything they're told. The prudent carefully consider their steps. The wise are cautious and avoid danger. Fools plunge ahead with reckless confidence. Isn't that amazing? Only the simpletons believe everything they're told. The prudent carefully consider their steps. The wise are cautious and avoid danger. Fools plunge ahead with reckless confidence. And see, remember, the Lord said, go to the ant and consider her ways and be wise. Simpletons believe everything they're told. Yeah, man, there's plenty of money out there. Where is it? There is plenty of money out there. There is. We just have a distribution problem. The wise are cautious, though, and avoid danger. And fools, though, plunge ahead with reckless confidence. You see, time brings about a change. It really does. Time brings about a change. And change can be very good. But in one place, if you offended any person of this tribe, they would raise their hands and they would curse you. And here's what they would say as they curse you: may you remain in the place where you are. Did you know it is a curse to be stuck in the place where you are? Mentally, emotionally, psychologically. Can you imagine if you were in a job right now and you were still getting the minimum wage that people were making in 1980? Can you imagine how you would feel? You'd be cursed because you'd be way below the poverty line. You really would. You'd be in a real fix. But they would raise their hand, and the way they would pronounce the curse is, may you remain in the place where you are. I bet you that there are some folks in this place and folks who are watching by television, people who are listening by CD, people that are watching by the web right now, and you've got classmates. You've been out of school for a while, and they are in the same place mentally and emotionally as they were when you were back in school, and you can tell by the way they treat you. Because they haven't changed, they assume you haven't changed. And so they have been stuck in the place where they are. Anything with real life grows. That's the greatest sign that you know that something is alive, is that it is growing. You ought to be growing. I don't care how old you are. Something ought to be growing. Your fingernails still grow. Your hair will still be growing. Everywhere, out of your ears, your nose, up in down your back. Ladies start getting mustaches. They did plucking hair out of the chin. When you look at it, you ought to just say, Lord, thank you for life. Thank you, Jesus, that I'm still growing. But let me just say this to you, that your future is not based on where you are. Your future is based on where you decide to stay. Your future is not based on where you are. It is based on where you decide to stay. Where have you decided to stay? You know, there's a Latin proverb that says, un hombre no está donde él está, pero donde él ama. A man is not where he lives, but he is where he loves. A man is not where he lives, but he's where he loves. That's why, you know, there's a song years ago that said, your body may be here, but your mind is on the other side of town. Because a man is not where he lives, he's where he loves. Your future is not based on where you are. Your future is based on where you decide to stay. And if you made no preparation to move forward into the future, that's where you'll be relegated like that curse. May you remain in the place where you are. And 20 years down the road, you'll be thinking the same way you're thinking now. You'll be doing the same habits. And when you do the same things, you'll continue to get the same results. Did you know that at the beginning of the 20th century, the buggy manufacturing and horse care were major industries that were employing hundreds of thousands of people? And then when the automobile was first invented, the automobile was seen as a passing fad. It's very interesting. But within a few years, the poor little horse and buggy industry and all of the jobs associated with those industries had nearly faded into history. But meanwhile, hundreds of thousands and eventually millions of new jobs were created in the automobile manufacturing and parts industries. And those jobs were actually cleaner, they were higher paying, they had higher standards of living than ever before. See, they made provisions to go from one thing to another. And there are some people today that are still at a horse and buggy pace in an internet supersonic jet age because they have not changed. They didn't make preparations for the seascape that they were on. Everything around them was changing, and they are still at horse and buggy pace. It's amazing with the corporate world and then the church world. Most folks in the church world are at least 15 to 20 years behind the corporate world. I mean, it was a long time. At my first pastorate, We didn't even have an answering machine. I mean, if you didn't catch a person while they were in the office, tough. And they, I mean, and this is back in the 80s. Then by the time the 90s rolled around, I mean, when fax machines came in, they wouldn't even dabble in it. I mean, that was for the corporate world. It's not that they were so expensive, but they just couldn't embrace it. Still at horse and buggy pace. And the technology, the seascape was changing all around them. Just everything was changing. Alvin Toffler spoke with prophetic insight when he said that the educated of the 21st century will be he or she who can learn, unlearn, and relearn. I mean, you've got to have that ability to learn, unlearn, and relearn. And it's a constant process. Every time you get a new cell phone, you've got to learn, unlearn, relearn. Isn't that true? Every time you get a new version of something on a computer, you got a new computer, as you switch over from Windows to a Mac or something of that nature, you've got to learn, unlearn, relearn. Isn't that true? Anytime you get new gadgets. Some of you all are too young to remember 8-track players. Some of y'all don't even know what a record player is. It's amazing. It is so amazing to find children born in the 80s and they don't know what a record player is. And they look at that stuff as like it's some prehistoric dinosaur. And I mean, they weren't even called record players. They were called turntables. And you make reference to a 45, they don't know what you're talking about. They have to go look it up on Wikipedia. Well, let me just remind you that growth and reinvention are the things that actually sustain life. They sustain life. If there was ever a time for you to reposition yourself, that time is now. If there was ever a time to reposition yourself, that time is now. The fact of the matter is that what got you where you are right now will not get you where you want to go.
Thank you for watching Power for Living with Bishop Dale C. Bronner. Until next time, God bless you.